Wait, what? I didn't even cast Twister yet. What even happened? He died on round 2. I didn't even start the fight. Like I got stuck there. Oh, that was such a huge cast. Holy, that must have been like max. Look at that guy get roasted. I think I actually like max frenzy twofold proc. I love that. Hey. Wait, now he has cold exposure. Now he has it. He had it at the end. Oh, it has to crit for it to apply. What? Oh, okay. I was trying to apply it from range. Okay, those attacks must have never hit from range. Got a little bit of a static charge to them now. Oh, bosses are... Oh, this is wave 15. This is it. This is for the win. Got the ice bite, and it's down. Damn. Oh, got the juicy chill twisters. The phobia is dead. Victory! Book of Knowledge 2. Oh, you probably thought that was tier 4. No, that was just tier 1. Hey, welcome back everyone. It's New here. As you can see, I've been getting several of my Atlas passive points out of the way by doing the tiered boss kills for the various mapping mechanics, as I care very much about mapping, so I want to have all of the mapping efficiency I can possibly have, which means I've been spending the last day or two doing some bossing. Also, for a secondary purpose, to address some of the concerns that several of you have legitimately posed about this build as I've built it. Defenses, primarily. Maybe a little bit to a lesser extent offense, like single target, bossing damage. That's also been another question that's been coming up in some of the comments. But several of you have taken upon this build and say you absolutely love it, enjoy it for mapping purposes. So I don't think I need to discuss too much on that. But I did want to show the trash of this tier 4 Xesht here in the background, just to illustrate how incredibly strong it is. I've seen several other bosser exclusive builds, you know, that are better at killing the boss than this build, but actually pretty terrible at doing the trash. Can't even kill all the mobs. And just take a look at how much loot actually dropped there. You'll see I make money generally just by doing the trash on this fight, let alone the boss kill. So we're going to go over this tier 4 boss Xesht kill. I'll narrate kind of what's going on it. And then we'll look at the skills, gems. And I got about 3 different potential defensive setups that I want to share with you in a path of building, which will also be linked below. I opened the fight by basically just getting a little bit of Storm Lance down, and hopefully I can get a shock ground with overcharge support in there. So you'll see the boss is actually shocked at 30%, not 20%. So I could just walk over the boss, but no. Otherwise, basically just using Barrage and then casting Twister whenever the salvo support comes up to sync that up for one really nasty good Twister cast. I can tank certain mechanics like this one here, but Xesht does have the capacity to one-shot quite a bit. You can see I have 2200 HP, and I can barely survive some of the major hits that are coming up from the next mechanic, although I don't think I actually got hit very much. You'll see a lot of frenzy charges acquired. You'll see how fast I can move through this. I mean, this is one of the best things about the build, is that there's a boss that kind of one-shots you unless you have a lot of defenses. Well, you know, the way I tend to make characters is I just make them zoomy enough so I'd never get hit. Now, there can be some body blocking involved here, but we do have dodge roll, of course, to get out of that. So we get another nice Twister roll and just easily able to maneuver the boss out of basically everything he does there. And that's the kill. And so, you know, I didn't succeed every single time I tried to do this because, again, a little bit glassy, but generally speaking, it's really not that hard. And you can see the damage is there. A little bit over a minute on the kill. So it's not some insane, crazy, tripped out boss. There's a lot of RNG in the Twisters. And I'm actually going to have more on the Twisters in a future video, probably the next video. Be on the lookout for that. I'm right in the middle of having some pretty major breakthroughs on understanding the Twister damage, how the monsters take damage received. I've been able to boost my damage quite a bit since any of the content that you just saw here as I'm now recording this. So I'm very excited to present that later. But again, we're focusing a little bit more on just bossing, in particular defense and stuff like that. So let's look at the passive tree to begin with. You can see I'm still taking the same ascendancy points that I was. By the way, for mapping, I generally think that Mystic Harvest is a little bit better for this build. than Predatory Instinct. Don't get much out of it. But for bossing, definitely Predatory Instinct. I'm still starting off the same way, still going around down here, up there. Since making the most recent update video, I believe this might be new here, going down, taking Savagery back again, getting Prolonged Assault. For a while I was doing Catapult and Locked On. I really like these points, but some of these are kind of more quality of life angle. And there will be some better insight in the POB section. We discussed a little bit more about the decision to take these, but this is sort of the most efficient, tightest, highest DPS, most glassy variation of the build, at least for bossing, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend this version over the others. So yeah, we'll just save that for the end of the video, but this is what I ran with, and this is exactly the same setup that I had on that tier 4 Xesht kill. I also believe since I made a video last time, I changed the body armor to get a really juicy life roll. This is why I went from, say, 1700 life to 21 or 2200 life. Also, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't switch out the Serpent's Amulet for this one. This is really nice. I wish I had Spirit on it, but it does give some extra life and res and frees up some spot for, you know, maybe some life runes and whatnot. Everything else, I believe, looks the same. Well, I added this unique charm, but yeah, everything else looks basically the same there. Still missing life on the ring. That's the one place that I really want to get it, and I don't have it. And it makes a big deal on the defensive front. That we try to get life everywhere we can. Literally cannot get it on the boots, the ring, or the shield, but you can get it everywhere else. Now looking at the damage links, I remember, just as a quick side point, you know, for bossing, Herald of Thunder doesn't matter. It does matter for the trash, so I can leave it on there. I put Reach into Herald of Thunder because it doesn't matter for the accuracy there. You don't receive any of the penalty, and you do get a boost for Area of Effect. And so I moved it out of Infused Weapon, which also got a boost from the Area of Effect, but did receive a penalty, I believe, if it exploded right in melee range where you were. And Primal Armament is in here, so I got a couple of the masteries. So I've switched up some of the support gems here. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but I swapped out Pin for Cold Exposure. Definitely for bossing, you would do that. I do that now anyway because the build's strong enough. I basically freeze everything, and I don't run ailment threshold maps, generally speaking. I unfortunately forgot to mention in that really awesome video before about the Whirling Slash crazy fast movement that you're supposed to run level 1, or at least low level. And of course some people were concerned about how their mana was getting absolutely dunked on whenever they were casting real fast. That's because, just like Tempest Flurry back last time around, I kind of took this for granted. You want to run the lowest level on here. It doesn't matter what the damage is here. I guess it matters a little bit if you're trying to pin enemies, but otherwise not much. Alright, let's look at Twister, okay? The first sort of really important switch came here. I'm now running Inevitable Critical here. It appears, and again, I'm still kind of in the thick of figuring this all out, it appears that Twisters can either crit or they can't in a single cast. And so it registers the hits based on the cast, not on the damage received. So even if I have like 100 different hits across 7 seconds that Twisters are up, I still get 100% of the benefit from an Inevitable Crit if I am waiting on, say, Barrage and Salvo Sport, which takes more than 4 seconds to do. So this is dramatically increasing my critical strike chance. The reason I'm increasing is because I don't, in fact, crit all that often without investing into it beyond what the Ascendancy passives do and all that accuracy stacking. For whatever reason, we still really only have somewhere around a 50, maybe 60% crit chance on Twister, and I'm not even sure if it's registering like distance to enemy or what have you. But, you know, more on that in a later video. Acceleration is still here. Salvo, you can swap Acceleration for a damage support if you want. And Overextend here helps me identify whether or not I'm critting or not, as the debuff doesn't really matter. Of course, Cast on Crit in general does, and you'll see this thing spin its numbers massively on a particular Twister cast, or not at all, which is a major problem, because if it's not working at all on a particular cast, then Sniper's Mark isn't proccing at all, and therefore I'm not getting Frenzy Charge, and so this is kind of spiral out of control in a bad way, and it's definitely cost me a few Simulacrum encounters for sure. I think that's where it matters the most. Doesn't really matter that much on bosses, because you can just extend the fight and do the mechanics if you have to. Lightning Spear has been subbed out for Storm Lance. Still running Ice Bite and Glaciation. I mean, I got it kind of for trash and Simulacrum. It's kind of a hybridized bossing Simulacrum setup here. Overcharge support's very smart. now that we can get a shock ground, and we don't even necessarily have to walk around the boss to shock them. We just stand still and cast this, say, in between, in that nice little slot of time in between twister casts. And then blindside is down here, because apparently it didn't work. I don't think with twisters at all. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it was 100% downside, cannot blind. When twister normally blinds everything, yeah, it might have been just a purely detrimental support gem. And so I do apologize to you guys for a long time supporting the idea of putting blindside and twister. I've now seen the light, and I think that's a really bad idea. Not so much because it can't blind, but because I don't think it was registering the crit damage, or at least not the crit chance portion of this at all. And then retreat is down here for a little added damage. Pre-med arcane tempo, okay? I don't know why it took me forever to realize this, but barrage is a spell and it's a cast time. So you should just put arcane tempo in here, because that's the thing that takes forever to cast this thing. It's why it's like the longest duration attack, because it's not actually an attack. It's a spell, it's a cast, so definitely put arcane tempo in there. I would actually prioritize this more. This change has taken place in the max roll link. All of this is down there. Set up that way, at least for a mapping setup, but most of the core changes here are included in there. Cast on crit now has Enfeeble in here. I didn't talk about this on the boss kill, but the boss was doing 15% less damage, so that's nice. You could put Hypothermia in there, but I think with the setup I had, we're already driving the enemy's resist down to 0 anyway through pen, so this is probably better to just use Enfeeble. Vulnerability doesn't work unless you have like 200 int, and then, yeah, it doesn't scale right. Single out still very important. The boss was permanently armor broken during that fight. Inspiration is going to be needed if you're spamming Enfeeble through this. You can hard cast Enfeeble instead if you want. You can, in fact, still run Cast on Freeze and hard cast Sniper's Mark too, as well, as you're not going to have the Herald or especially not the Charge Infusion in there anyway. Well, you might if you had Cast on Freeze, because you would have more Spirit available. Cast on Crit costs 90 Spirit when it's qualitied up, and Cast on Freeze is only 60. Combat Frenzy is a terribly unreliable way to get Frenzy charges on bosses, so you need to have Sniper's Mark in play. And I remind you, it has a cooldown, which means Ingenuity support. If you can fit it, it's kind of smarter to put down here in the Cast On link. Herald of Thunder now has Elemental Focus, Reach, Long Shot, and Pinpoint Critical is still down here. So that's going to be it for the passive, the gear update, and the gems as it pertains to bossing especially. Okay, so I just remind you that everything you saw right here isn't necessarily going to be on that max roll guide. I'm just kind of updating the best version of the mapping playstyle, I guess, and then we're going to leave the bossing section as a separate thing in PoB, which we're going to look at right now. All right, this is Path of Building 2. I've talked about this in a previous video. I've populated up 3 different variations of the build. Pure Life Glass is the one that I'm running, aptly named. This is exactly the setup I had before, the exact same jewels, exact same gear, skills, setup identically the same way. I was actually able to, yeah, populate it through PoE Ninja, pulling my own profile and just slamming it in to Path of Building. And so no changes there. This, I don't know why it gives me a little bit extra life than I have, but yeah, I needed the extra dext because again, the passive tree is so tight, I needed the extra attributes, so had to do that. But otherwise, you know, this is the setup it is. I'm prioritizing crit chance a little more than crit multi now, having recently understood that I'm not critting as often as I think or initially thought I was. But yeah, that is the setup I went with for all of my kills. This is more or less exactly what I did for everything that I killed. All the tier 0, 1, 2, 3 of all the different mechanics. Now let me show you another version. This is the ES Life Hybrid, and it features acrobatics because you would have additional evasion and energy shield. With this setup, you would not run the gear you see here. You would prioritize getting energy shield, especially on the helmet and gloves. If you can, you still want pure evasion on the chest for bestial skin and spectral ward, but you would likely maybe anoint subterfuge mask if you had a helmet that had like 400 plus energy shield, most notably, and that would give you, I don't know, somewhere in the realm of maybe 1500 life and 2500 ES at the very top end. You could maybe discount 20-30% on all those stats if you were kind of had scuffed gear, but if you went that route, it would certainly give you a max phys hit higher than what I had in those fights. And the nice thing about this is you do get the prioritized crit chance, which again, until recently I didn't think was all that important, but we're getting a lot of extra crit and crit chance going up this way. But we're losing out on a ton of other things like skill speed, projectile speed, area of effect, accuracy, and just attack speed. A lot of attack speed gone. But it's not that important for bossing. So I do think this is a pretty good version of the build, and it's definitely more along the lines of the way that people are building their Amazons in the meta. And everyone is kind of lamenting the fact that you have to go ES Hybrid. I'm resisting it heavily because I really want to kind of push the limit on relying more on life recovery, which is better suited for the more glassy setup. The bad thing about this setup is your recovery gets completely out of whack. You have to take Eternal Youth, and you have to spam your flask whenever you get hit. There's no other way to really get the energy shield back. The recharge rate doesn't work very good. You still have Leech for life as the backup, but you don't have enough ES to go Chaos Inoculation. It's really this sort of quirky in-between build where you technically have a lot more defense and max Fizz hit, but your recovery is just kind of in the can, and I don't really like I hate the playstyle of it in maps for sure. I recognize that it's stronger on bosses, especially a boss that hits rarely and hits really hard, like Xesht. Now the last one is a peculiar setup that I tested a little bit. I didn't like it because it costs a little too much damage. You lose a lot of crit. You lose some of the other quality of life things I mentioned before. You get a whole bunch of area of effect this way, which is kind of cool. But what this does is allow you to take Valpact and Bulwark. And this is truly the most defensive version of the build if you are proactively rolling to avoid or to take on incoming damage. That's 30% less damage taken while rolling. Conversely, you could use this for mapping and be immune to light stun, and then you're never going to roll on maps, generally speaking, anyway. Although you might need to get out of the way on terrain. You have to walk to get off of the terrain that you get stuck on. But Valpact is actually really nice. It gets a little... Well, it actually gets really bad when you like Burning Ground maps, but other than that, because you can't even press your life flask and you can't leech anything, you're just walking across Burning Ground. Aside from Burning Ground maps and other weird situations like that, Valpact is pretty crazy strong when you pair it up with Mystic Harvest and you get even just one life leech node on there. That is a lot of recovery. I mean, that's some serious recovery. And it's pretty nice going through maps because my life is just always topped off doing this setup. In the end, I did not elect to do this because I like having a little bit more player power on the offensive side and some of the quality of life, the faster proj, more accuracy, more movement speed through attacking, more skill speed from prolonged assault, and not to mention the extra frenzy charge. You're losing that on both of those other builds. Anyway, these are 1, 2, 3 separate ways that you could build it up, and this is not set up in a loadout, but just down here, okay? You just have to change it down here. And do keep in mind that the skills and the items might change a little bit. I'm not going the whole 9 yards and setting up 3 totally different builds for this, but I just wanted to give you some ideas. And yeah, a nice blueprint for a way you can adjust the build to get a little bit more of what you want. If you want more recovery, if you want to still focus on life and get some defense, try this setup. If you don't ever want to get light stunned again for the life of you, try this setup. If you want to have the highest max Fizz hit possible passively, go for the ES Hybrid setup. That's on you. Or continue doing it the way I'm doing and keep asking about concerns on the defensive stuff because I just kind of roll with it, baby. I just roll with it. And with that, the video is concluded, and here you go. Proof of all the different skill points in there. I still haven't done Arbiter, but everything else here related to mapping is now done. I think these are probably the best Atlas passives if you're trying to like farm loot in particular. I guess technically Xesht Madness is going to be better. You know, I'll probably do that when it gets Headhunter maybe, but I'm not really focusing on Ritual. I like Expedition though. It's nice, fast, and you still get some decent value out of that, and people are prioritizing it a little bit more with the things that it has to offer because of Recombinators. It is more valuable to do than it used to be. Just doing Essence right now. I'm probably going to switch around, do some other things, but taking the sort of mandatory stuff for anything related to magic finding. I'm actually beginning to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for the whole magic finding thing. A lot of people were struggling, saying there's like no loot at all, but I've begun to pump up some maps with some pretty decent rarity and more rare setups, and doing some delirious breach maps, and honestly starting to see some actual loot drop. So we'll look forward to that later in the future too. But the very next video almost certainly will be all the major breakthroughs and epiphanies that I've figured out as far as monsters taking incoming damage. I think that's going to be a really important video for the community, especially for those of you playing Twisters. So shout out to you if you're still playing Twisters. I hope this video addressed some of the concerns or questions you had about bossing or defenses. If there's anything I left out, let me know in the comment section down below. And with that, I will leave you now, and I'm going to go back to doing some of that stuff that I enjoy to do. Not bossing, but mapping. See you in the next video.